obviously dealing with corruption, bribery, and those type of things. But we always leave out the participation and predictability, because that's how you get there. Which led me to some notes that I found from, we did from November 2017. It was asking the question about governance. What does it truly mean to you? What has the government, this is from November 2017, what has the government promised, committed to in the form of governance? How do we make our government more accountable to us? How do we find out more about what is going on in our government? How do we participate in what affects us? What are our rights as stakeholders in our country? Once upon a time, I used to believe that we could rely on the various business organizations and professional organizations, but I've soon learned, I have a dim view of them, and I won't say here, but I find them very passive. And I remember at November 27 function of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce, the now Prime Minister made a comment, and she said, people get confused between being neutral and telling the truth. And that was, when I reflected on it, that was a very fundamental statement and very relevant to what we're doing here. People get confused between political, we get so caught up in political partisanship that we forget what's right or wrong.
Correct.
And we need to, and this is where these type of community groups come in. These are where the parliamentary representative gets asked the hard questions through a forum. Whereas if I need to ask, right now if I need to ask something that's going on in my community, my only thing is to go straight to my parliamentary representative. Now, truth be told, they may be busy doing all other 1,000 other things, but if they were to answer every call from every community, it'd be very difficult. For this for me creates a process in which to do it. There are many other benefits towards of how this is set up and how it's structured. A lot of them been outlined, but it really creates that community participation and the engagement of the citizenry, and provides the conduit through which we can get proper governance from our government.
Dwayne, you're at a point where we'd like to ask you a question.
Sure.
What do you therefore think should be the relationship between the parliamentary representative and the People's Assembly? Should he be a member of it? Should he just attend sessions? What do you think should be
I
that
think it's
relationship?
fundamental that they should attend the sessions, but what we have to be very careful of, we've come out of I got to be very careful how it's, because victimization and retribution was part of the process. So you have to have a very open dialogue. You have people that are still frightened to speak out.
Yes.
And that has to be encouraged. And, you know, Ms. Howell and myself will make a joke when we hear a siren pass outside while we were giving our things. We say, well, we finally, they're coming for us now. And I mean, it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke, you know, because there was the fear of victimization and retribution. In terms of some of the things that I was speaking out, I had to take a step out of my business because it would not have been fair to my team to be, because of my activism and speaking out, but not speaking out, just educating people on what is really true in the society, not from a political perspective, but from a neutral perspective, but actually saying what it is, good or bad, saying what it is. Mm-hmm. But I had to take a step away from my business for 2 years because I could not, it would not have been fair to my team to face what I felt as a personal passion.
Yes.
So I do believe there should be engagement, and I think that what this does is a filter to that victimization, retribution, because right now under our current system, the power of the people exists for 1 day, and that's 1 day every 5 years. When you have engaged citizenry like this,
yes,
the parliamentary representative is always responsible to the citizenry for 365 days a year under this format, if it's structured correctly, without the political involvement. It's very hard in a society like ours to not have political involvement. For me, the key is, that is the key, to have it in its ideal form, to to operate on the basis of what is wrong and what is right, and not based on what party is saying or doing it. Because there's no way that any one person will ever be 100% right. And we have to be able to have people that say yes or no. We don't need people who are yes people, and we don't need people who are no people. We need people who are going to say what it is based on their opinion.
Yes. Well said.
I have nothing to add. Well
Thank you.
said.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
He's a very shy fella, but Duane is a community man. If you want to call people's assembly, you can say Duane Burke. He is it. People house burn down. Duane is going to help. I had experience with him some time back with some bad weather. People want to help. Duane Burke get in the car, drive and help. Everybody home locked down, he on the road. Community man. It's any people we need to be on board.
Correct.
Right, Ambassador?
Yes, what I wanted to say is a lot of people don't realize that our government and our parliament operates under the Westminster system, which we inherited from our colonial masters. Okay? And I think this People's Assembly is a fantastic idea because I felt limited in being able to come forward with my ideas in the last 10 years. Because I felt that the only way I would be able to get my idea out was writing a letter to the newspaper or calling in on brass tacks. But previously, how it was before, where you had an issue in the community, you might only feel that you could go and when the representative had his constituency office open, okay? But that was limited. Now that they have these people assemblies, we can, as the people, we can come here and say what issues we have in the community, how we think that the issues can be resolved, and we have more of a voice now, okay? But there's one issue that I want to speak about. This is the business authority from February the 18th, 2019. And the title of the article was Solar Dream No More, because it seemed as if there were companies that were doing solar that were dropping out and not doing it anymore. So that was where the article, what it was written about. But in the article, Roger Blackman spoke and said that our renewable, the amount of electricity that is generated in Barbados at the time, February 2019, last year, was 5%. 5% of that electricity comes from renewable energy. 2% from the solar farm down in St. Lucie, belonging to Barbados Light and Power, and the other 3% from the 1,800 households that have photovoltaic on their roofs. Now, that was that update on where we were, because the goal is to be 100% renewable energy by 2030, which is in 10 years' time. Now, I find that we haven't been getting the updates because the Water Authority put down...
Charles, do you want to relate it to local government?
Yeah, it's under the oversight of the government agencies, under the Ministry of Energy.
So you're saying a People's Assembly could have
Yeah, well, I
on matters of energy?
yeah,
Right,
because
okay.
they have QEH, housing, so I figure Ministry of Energy should fall under this.
Right. And
Yeah,
we really,
I'm
we
gonna
really
be- I'm
appreciate
gonna
the
be-
point you made about not having a location to complain, because as you said in Barbados, if you can't find the minister, if you can't find the parliamentary representative, you had to run to Fontebelle and find the nation or the advocate. So
Right.
we really
So
appreciate the point.
going
you
back
made.
to my first point about we operate under the Westminster system, in Barbados now, there are flaws in the Westminster system that we operate under. Now, if we want to get to 100% renewable energy by 2030, we need to get more updates. The Water Authority put down a solar farm in Thorne, and they were supposed to put down one in Bowmanston after Roger Blackman gave this 5%
Well,
update.
what Ambassador Commission has been saying, and we're wrapping up now, is
Yeah.
that the local community should have an input in matters of where you place projects that affect the community.
Yeah,
So
let me just
we
quickly-
want to thank you very much.
Yeah, can I just quickly make my point?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So I asked a guy that knows a lot about the renewable energy, if we are going to get the update, if that we have moved from 5% to 6%, 7%, whatever. And he told me it's not Light and Power's responsibility to do that. It's the Ministry of Energy. So I feel that if we are moving up in renewable energy, we should get an update twice a year.
Okay.
And whichever, if it's Light and Power or the Ministry of Energy, whichever one of those entities is supposed to give the update, we should be able to get it at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year.
And
Thank you.
and a well-functioning People's Assembly could be the mediator
Yeah.
in these communications.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'll try and make it brief. Hi, everyone. My name's Jacqueline Archer. I live in Christchurch, obviously. I live in Silver Sands, and I'm talking from the point of a resident and as also somebody from the corporate arena. So I'm a business psychologist. I'm a CEO of a multinational company that's worked here for 15 years. So I'm going to share my concerns straight away. My job is to find the right people for the right jobs. That's what we do, business psychology. I now work in artificial intelligence, predictive algorithms, and all of that kind of thing. So my concern is, how are we going to ensure, to go back to something I think you said, how are we going to ensure that we get the right people for the job? I already am concerned about the diversity in the room this evening. So if this is the level of enthusiasm and commitment that we're getting now, I don't know how we're going to keep 600 people on board, motivate them. My concern already, we work with many governments all over the world, is the average minister does not generally know how to manage new people in the new age of agile leadership. And I'm just wondering how they're going to manage a group of volunteers, keep them motivated, keep them on track, and actually get them to get something out the process and not just support the government. So it's actually something for the individuals, for the community, and anybody who's involved walks away having learned more about the process and other people working in groups, and more importantly about IT, because I don't know how this will even work without a serious investment in IT, and how these people are going to report all these wonderful things that they're doing and finding without it killing and overloading their everyday work. So those are my simple concerns around IT and community and tourism. Thanks a lot.
In terms of membership of the assemblies, we're hoping that the Electoral and Boundaries Commission will manage the process of election and not selection. And the members of the assemblies will be elected by the persons who live in the geographical area. We've been mentioning, presenting a CV, and this is not a CV of academic qualifications, but a CV of community service, a record of community service, and you present that, and hopefully the people in the community will vote for you.
Well, I'd
sit on
like
the
to add
People's
another
Assembly.
21st dimension onto
Yes.
that, because that's usually not enough.
Okay.
We have to actually look at the person, what they do well, what they enjoy doing. Everybody brings their own unique set of gifts to the table, particularly in the world of volunteering. And it's our responsibility to understand the gifts that people are giving us and make sure that we make the most out of those gifts. So as a psychologist, I strongly support the use of some kind of instrument, tool, questionnaire, or whatever. I mean, we don't just do personality tests for reality shows and romance shows. We do them for big things, you know, like NASA, governments, you know, Department of Defense. So I think a project like this is worthy of getting the greatest people who are the most motivated in the community and thinking more about the diversity of the people that we're going to need to get the communities where they need to be.
Well, I don't mind saying publicly that it will be an opportunity for religious leaders in the community to get involved
Absolutely.
with the community beyond their congregations. And I would think they start at a big advantage. They certainly know a lot of people, and a lot of people know them.
We've got a lot of female-only enterprise. There's so much out there that we don't know about, so I'm kind of leaning more towards the community, although I originally wasn't, because I think, like the first speaker said, I'm like, with this size, do we really need all of this encumbrance when we should be focusing on being as agile as we can possibly be? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
And don't forget, there's nothing written in stone. That this is why we are here, holding these meetings, to get your ideas, and then to come up with a final document.
And if there are any suggestions that you'd like to submit, such as an example of the profiling that you would have discussed, you are free to send them to the thorne.commission@barbados.gov.bb.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Hardin. And
Can you come a little closer to your microphone,
Sure.
please?
Is this better? Okay. I'm Michelle Hardin, and one of my concerns is the whole idea of the partisanship of whether or not the assembly should be partisan, politically or not. And I think we need to have an honest conversation among ourselves as Barbadians that most of us have a political partisan bias. And it will be, so I'll support what the last speaker said, it would be interesting to have some kind of psychological assessment that also could put that there to rest, because I could be covert or overt. And it has to be that the persons who come to sit on the assemblies are coming from the belly of wanting to give the best to the community or get the best for the community. So I'm a Christchurch person, first and foremost. And so if we had a People's Assembly, I'm thinking, what happened when we had the sewage problem and we impacted Graham Hall Swamp and my former primary school? If we had a People's Assembly, the people from St. Lawrence would have been able to come and make some case for restitution for what happened at the school, the destruction of the school plant. And it should not have to depend on whether or not I had to go and have a meeting with the Member of Parliament, or I knew who was the influencer for the political party in the area. It would have been an open situation. Again, I am a micro business person, and there's no space for me in the Barbados Chamber of Commerce. Maybe I can come through as a small business, a member of the Small Business Association, but where is the voice for the micro and the medium-sized business? Again, I'm thinking that if there's a People's Assembly, as I am responsible for my geographical space, I'm looking to document all of my business people, micro or otherwise, and that there has to be some sharing of income, not only that I'm going to get income coming to me from what the government has decided to give a People's Assembly, but within that geographical space, there has to be something that generates the income that also allows persons, micro, medium, or otherwise, to have a say, and also because they have a say, maybe there will be a space, and I'll hear people scream, maybe, that there is a cost to that. Because when you come to open a business, let's say in Oistins, you're impacting water, electricity, sewage. You're taking, your business is causing resources to come in, you're impacting the road infrastructure. You want to have a space that looks a particular way. Whose responsibility is it outside of central government to ensure that your business can continue to flourish? Those are conversations that we need to have as Barbadians that we are not quite yet ready to have, and that we need to be able to say in a total way what we want Barbados to look like, not what it has been, but what and where do we want it to go. We've been doing this in this way for the last 50-something years. Since 1937 to now, is this as far as we can get? And if so, where else can we go? Yes, there's a space for technology and for making Barbados smart business-wise and otherwise, but there's also a space for Barbadians to think about where we want Barbados to be and to look like, not by 2030, but maybe even by 2050. I might not be here. but my children or grandchildren probably will be. The other side of it is, I think the assembly works in a way, these town hall meetings work in a way because they allow people to come and have a say in what's happening. But I also think that we're still kind of limited in terms of who we're actually reaching. And so I'm saying that because there's some people who will never come to a building, who will never come to a space.
We're streaming.
Yes, you're streaming. And there's some people who are very glad because they don't want to be identified as having to be a part of or
And
to
we're
be
hearing
listening
you,
in.
which is important.
Yes, they are.
That's why
But
we're here.
there is a group of persons that I think we're not hearing. And I'm just wondering if there's another mechanism where we can have an opportunity for persons to, I know that you'll say that they can submit, sir, but there, again, some people may not think that they have the facility to write, or that they'll think that if they write, they'll be judged. There are lots of other dynamics. So I'm just wondering if there is a space where, or an opportunity where we can take the assembly maybe outside.
What would you suggest?
I would suggest something that is not formal or appear to be formal. So, because I'm a Christchurch person, let's say we're having something on Dover playing field. And if we can have the assembly be a part of that, or persons from the assembly, and people can just, it'll have to be structured, but still in a destructured way, participate. Because, again, because of how we are as a people, when I look at the assembly, and it's called the Thorne Commission, and Mr. Thorne is a member of the Barbados Labour Party, so there's a Barbados Labour Party initiative, and I don't want to go because that's my party, or I don't feel that way, or I don't even like him. Because that is the way that we are as Barbadians. And therefore, I'm saying that we need to collapse as much as we can, or seem to collapse some of these barriers to get the most out of the exercise so that we get as full of participation as possible. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can be assured that we've met with several interest groups, the trade unions. We're supposed to meet with the churches as well, the religious, the faith-based organizations. So we're reaching people, Ms. Hardin, so have no fear.
And you're going right up David's alley, because if it was up to him, we would be visiting every single community group, school.
Yes.
He wants us to visit everyone. Would you come and advocate for us as well, too? He's not even looking at me.
And while we have a bit of a hiatus, we wanted to explain, and because there are people here who are here for the first time and hearing about the work we've done, we have based it. David came and spoke a lot about constituency, and I think he was mentioning that the DEO wants to move away from the constituency base and become parish based. Did you say that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And that is where we wish to begin. We want to avoid this issue of constituency. We don't want it to turn into another partisan political instrument. And that is why we're basing it on parish. As we've said over and over, there's already an established infrastructure in Barbados that is based on the parish. One of our members, Richard Carter, always makes the point that constituency boundaries are artificial. I know an area in St. Michael, for example, and 3 constituencies actually meet at a street corner. And everybody lives around that street corner. There's nothing constituency about that. We feel that the parish is a convenient identity, because parishes do have a distinct culture. I know a man from St. Philip, and I know a man from St. Lucie, and they're different. They come with a parish identity, and we want to preserve that. Yeah? Precisely. It was parochial in the 60s, but as Crystal said, St. Michael is large. Population density is large, so you cannot, it's going to be impossible to manage St. Michael with one assembly, and that's why we are proposing 4. Christchurch, again, population density 3 as well. So I just wanted to explain that that is the basis on which we are functioning, that we are establishing parish identities. Yes.
Some St.
Yes.
Philip people have been saying that as well.
But that helps us to avoid the connotation, the partisan connotations. Yeah, we don't want you to hear that you live in mean, you live in Christchurch West, and I was hoping that you meant Western Christchurch as opposed to a constituency. Okay. All right.
I also want to add, there's also a fear that some of you might feel that there's so much expenditure on behalf of government. But where we have been so far, we have received a lot of support from the private sector. For example, we were down in Graydon City School, the Garrison, and the issue down there with garbage. And after the meeting, a business owner who had a business in that area came and volunteered his services. He was willing to donate garbage cans through that whole area, the Bayland, the Beckers Road area. Then we went to West Terrace, and here, one two problems down there was potholes. And there's a man down there who has a construction firm, and he's willing to donate asphalt to patch some holes in Oxnards and the Averns. So everything does not depend on government and how much money they're spending. If you get people within each community,
Correct.
and every community, their businesses, whether it is a rum shop, a church, a construction agency, every community, there are business houses. And if they come and contribute and help, it saves the government a lot of money.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Barney Gibbs. I'm actually a member of the commission, but I'm here tonight as a resident of
Christchurch.
the area nearby from Enterprise.
I guess you know Barney too now.
I wanted to, first of all, thank Ralph for bringing up the Atlantic Shores Recycling Project. I do think it's a good example of bottom-up execution of a project and community involvement. Ultimately, it was at no cost to the government. I also want to add that Jessica is more involved than I am right now, and she's doing a good job of sustaining the
Barney,
project.
could we pause then and acknowledge Mrs. Lobo, who is not in Barbados presently, but who is a founder of that?
That's right, and
Yes.
Shari Lobo.
Thanks.
Leading on from what Adrian was saying just now, another project that comes to mind in the area that I wanted to mention was in Enterprise, just before you turn into Atlantic Shores. Some of the people in the room will now notice that there's a sea window park. Well, once upon a time, that was an area where the view was obscured by bush, and it was very difficult to access the little beach there for people in the area, people from Christchurch in general, surfers who wanted to go down there. We had approached central government with the idea of somehow appropriating the land, forming the park that you see there now. For whatever reason, it wasn't a priority. So at some point, we decided to try to go it alone and do it as a community. In the end, people, after making a start, a lot of people came on board. As Adrian said, there were persons who made a lot of donations in kind, companies that donated concrete for the steps. Homeowners gave plants that you see there now that form part of the landscape. Some individuals gave small amounts of cash for items that couldn't be done in kind. The final result there, right now, and I wanted to make the point because the earlier speaker, the gentleman that was talking about the cost of these people's assemblies, I personally believe they might actually save government money.
That's right.
Because if you can have a sea window or a recycling project right now that is functioning, that costs the government nothing, if you extrapolate that across Barbados, the savings to central government are immense.
That's right.
And would far outweigh what it would cost to administer these people's assemblies, in my humble opinion. Thank
Yes.
you.
But Barney,
Well said.
don't leave Barney. You got to share your story. For example, you all started a project in Atlantic Shores. Only the people at Atlantic Shores met there every Saturday morning and brought their bottles in plastic bags, books, etc., etc. It has gone so big now. People as far as St. Philip and St. George bring their bottles that they have collected for the whole month and bring it to Atlantic Shores. And they have an arrangement with the sanitation man there. Jose, who comes to pick us up? Barney, explain. Come on, brag, Barney, man.
Right.
Show off.
Stepping back a few years, Shari Lobo, myself, and Jessica wanted to institute a recycling project. As again, we weren't necessarily getting the cooperation that we wanted from central government. decided to do it as a community. One of the key things was that in the area, there was already a kind of a neighborhood watch structure in place. And that was supported by a WhatsApp group, which we expanded. And having that WhatsApp functionality really allowed us to, I suppose you could say, educate or encourage or inspire the community to do the particular recycling project. Another aspect of it that was very, I suppose, instrumental was having it as a pop-up recycling project. So whereas attempts in the past at setting up a recycling station met with some resistance from the community, having it on the the second Saturday in every month, for example, and then at the end of the period of time, let's say from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, or from 7 to 9, the area is returned to how it was before. So in the case of Atlantic Shores, there's a circular park. People bring their recycling. It's been Jose, it's been Bees Recycling. There've been different iterations. The recyclables are removed, and there is not a scrap of paper on the ground. It goes from being, 6 feet high of recyclables to not a scrap. But that didn't happen immediately. It took a lot of effort on the part of Jessica, Shari, staying there at the circle and interacting with the community. Okay. And one of the most heartening aspects of that whole project, just to finish, is the fact that a lot of the older members in our neighborhood who were at first, let's say, a bit reluctant to participate or a bit shy to participate, in the end became probably the most dedicated and most diligent recyclers. I also would like to call
Noel.
You want to make a couple of words? Noel to come and make because Jessica has spoken already, but Noel has been instrumental in keeping the project alive. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Noel Smith.
Barney, the point
Yeah.
that you're well making is the social bonding that has emerged out of this, so that it goes beyond recycling and people get to meet each other. People who probably would not have known each other, living on the same street perhaps. And this project has given birth to a kind of social bonding that helps to keep the community secure and really develops the community as a genuine community. I really think that all communities in Barbados need to do recycling, and I really think that this is the beginning of local government in Barbados, when you have a community like this cooperating in projects like this. And we want to congratulate ASN, we want to congratulate the Graham Hall Group, and we want to see it all over Barbados. And I've certainly in the past treated the ASN, that is Atlantic Shores Network Recycling Group, as a prototype for all communities to follow. So we want to pay tribute to you, Barney Gibbs, Shari Lobo, and Jessica Bengsley, for starting a project which needs to be replicated across Barbados.
Thanks, Rob. If the People's Assemblies can put the environment on the agenda, the way Jessica mentioned earlier, and all of these other issues, we're all for it.
Thank you very much.
I just want to say something to me commending Barney in terms of his whole project. I'm sure that when y'all started the project, y'all didn't say, well, we can call BLP or DLP or NDP or whatever,
Precisely.
right? You look at a need in the community and everybody came together, right? And the whole idea of this whole partisan thing, if you notice, it says people's, it didn't say party, it said people's empowerment. And the idea is that people coming together, we're all Barbadians. I mean, and the old spirit that we had where in those days people would come and give you a breadfruit, you could go in the country. We need to get back to that, the whole thing, and not necessarily look at a party, right? Now, the lady earlier spoke about the whole thing about screening people and finding out, and somebody just texted me and said, not only for the assemblies, but for the House of Parliament, right? Where you can screen MPs and so on to see the kind of people that we are putting into I mean, it may sound like a joke, but it's true, you know? So, and the idea of, and I like what you're saying in terms of that we don't just want people who just want to come with their own political agendas, but people who are genuinely interested in seeing communities better, which by extension will make your country better, right? And I think it is important that we come to people to say, well, we need people to come on board, right? I'm all for people coming on board, people empowerment, where we work together as communities. Right? As I said earlier, I live in a community, and I make sure when I move into the community, I made my presence felt, right? And if I saw anything that was going to impact on that community, right, I spoke about it, and I also pull along the people in the community. Right? I had a crisis at my house a year ago, where someone fell into the well at my house, and quick, so everybody came to my assistance. So one thing is that if we get this right, it's going to save time and it's going to save money, and it's going to bring back that community spirit that's so lacking in Barbados.
Well said.
And the garbage has no color.
Yes.
Garbage is not red, blue, or yellow. Garbage is garbage. But it affect the whole community. Everybody affected. BDPIP or LIP.
LIP service.
Yes, Dwayne.
Yeah, just adding on to what Barney, there are many community groups out there that are doing not the same but similar, but one of the groups that I think needs specific mention is the Haynesville Community Center.
Yes.
The Barbados Red Cross and Live Earth is doing healthy waste management practices and environmental awareness education programs through there, and they're developing a program that can be, along with the ASN network, to be extrapolated and put through communities within Barbados.
Yes, thank you.
Well, one of the points I was trying to make is, well, just to say, efficiency in itself, if you can get efficiency up to the best level it can be, it's going to reduce cost. Okay? One of the things that came to me just now was the same system I was talking about that I mentioned that had local government. One of the main features that has is workflow processing. So when work leaves one area, I mean, it can be worked in various applications or layers, like WhatsApp, email. You push something along to the next person. One of the things I would try to say here now is to, while we're thinking to do this, and yes, we have to have accountability and we have to have systems in place, but try to cut the bureaucracy. That is what kills everything, on top, in addition to the partisan issue. Because I mean, we only have a few people here. I mean, this is actually, I mean, you said you're streaming and stuff, but, you know, I've seen some assemblies that are bigger and some are smaller, but it goes back to when you see people's assembly, they think, oh, it's a party thing and all this kind of thing. But cut out the bureaucracy and put the right systems in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
Khalil.
Yes, I didn't, good night, everyone. I didn't plan to speak tonight because I have written the commission already, and as you know, I would have spoken to one of these town halls already, but the discussion was sufficiently incisive and engaging to draw me in, particularly on the point of cost that was first articulated by the gentleman, I don't remember the name, Mr. Waith, that, and subsequently by the gentleman from Christchurch West, about the cost and the, in my view, cost is usually increased by the level of sophisticated bureaucracy that exists in these things, and how I would envision the function of the People's Assemblies being is not necessarily one that is heavy on bureaucracy and top-heavy in that way, but one that, that serves an enabling function so that they can work synergistically with various government departments, the state-owned enterprises, so the SSA, etc., and by facilitating these improvements to the community rather than doing it themselves, because if they do it themselves, then they incur the cost of doing it. However, if they facilitate it, then that cost is significantly decreased. Certainly, I know that in Dominica, that is what is done Dominica has a smaller population than we do, and yet they have a far more stratified system of local government with various types, town councils, urban councils, village councils, etc., with a smaller population, and it seems to work pretty well for them. Secondly, the notion that partisanship will be completely banished, I think, is one that does not necessarily intersect with reality. Because when we think of partisanship, we think of it taking on a necessarily political, party-based complexion. The fact is that when human beings, I think, gather in rooms, there is an inevitable amount, level and degree of partisanship, of human resource challenges that take place. People not necessarily disliking each other for particular party reasons, but just disliking each other. And that the structure of the commissions then should be engineered in such a way as to make as minimal as possible those sorts of what are very natural human disagreements which will stymie the function of the commissions. I want to quickly answer one of your questions that you posed, Crystal, at the beginning, and that was about the, I don't know if it was a question actually, but how these commissioners, rather assemblymen or women, should be remunerated. In my view, I don't necessarily believe that it should be on a purely voluntary basis. You're asking people to take time out of their days, to use their petrol, to use their time, etc., 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 so that then they would, in my view, you would be able to boost the morale of the assembly members as well as perhaps increase productivity were you to pay them some sort of honorarium, much like what board members are paid per meeting, and not necessarily a fixed sum like what members of parliament receive, but an honorarium, so per meeting attended, in the same way as board members. And there was another question that you had posed, but I forget now. I didn't make the note. Pardon? Age. I personally don't necessarily believe that the age should be lowered any further past 18, with special allowance perhaps being made for your school representatives. But as a policy matter, where you have to make policy for the majority of people, I think that perhaps not 21 as members of parliament are, but 18 would be a sufficient age in my opinion. As I said, with that special provision for the secondary school students that you had wanted to, that is outlined in the document. But to me, the salient point that comes out of this is not necessarily creating complex structures, but to allow, because we recognize that all of the country people act in community-spirited ways, whether it's the Atlantic Shores Network and the various other people around the country that do really fantastic work that we don't necessarily always hear about. But the fact is that it doesn't happen in all communities. So that then a structure like this will allow it to diffuse to all communities in this country, while at the same time not incurring that cost. So that is just a little of what I had wanted to say. So thank you very much.
So
Thank you very much.
Khalid, the question I had to ask you, you mentioned age 18.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you are not 18.
Yes.
How old are you now?
16 now.
So for example, we encounter an outstanding individual like you in each community, less than 18. We need your services. So are you saying that we could bend a little bit and say 18, but with an exception?
Yes,
I 16. You tell me.
I accept that.
Yes, on the shortcut. I
accept that 18, in my view, is a good age for most of the commission members. But as I said, you can special provision can be made for the I think you
like yourself.
No.
Really
special provision, Donovan, can be made for the secondary school representatives.
That's right.
Yes, so without a doubt. Also, I asked last time, when you say electioneering will not be permitted, what does that mean? What is the definition that you are giving to electioneering? Because providing CVs for perusal by the electorate is electioneering. So I believe you mean a particular kind of electioneering that takes on a ugly character. But I believe that needs some definition provided to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes? Short of time. Yes.
Given the time that we have left, you have about 4 minutes.
Yes.
Two? So
Right. I'm going to make mine very short.
Thanks.
Mine is concerned about the community well-being themes. I know that this is
You want to
going
raise the mic, please?
going to take a lot more time and therefore allow it to be spread over the rest of the parish and community-based sessions when you have. But largely, what I would like to just say in brief, that you've got to hear well sorted out, but all that needs to be articulated in there is someone to work out the population pyramid, so you get an understanding how your community is developed over the age groups, who are the stronger ones, who are the weaker ones, where you need it to balance them out, and so on. And then you add to that your educational strata and so on. But more specifically, when you're going to have to deal with the able-bodied persons, and I believe every community should be able to have maybe 1 or 2 homes again, who would be willing to say, yes, you could come and let her stay with me for the day, and so when you come back, you just collect her, and the goodwill develops from there. So I think that's something that we need to do again, rather than everybody's door is closed, and nobody is opening them because they say, you're not coming and dirty up my carpet, and so on. So we need to once again give ourselves that opening to be able to enable that aspect of it.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that relating to the recycling and so on, you can also get some nice garbage cans, get some schools, give them themes and let them paint the cans, and you can send them back to either a group like the one in St. Thomas, and they can then use them and
Thank you. For
pay
the,
for them or whatever it is.
for the
Yes.
record, can you just give your name quickly?
Eugene Pilgrim.
Thank you.
Mrs. Thorne, I heard you on Tuesday saying you didn't get a chance to see these communities. Nice to see you tonight.
Eugene. That's Sean. That's Sean. You look like Sean.
He looked like strong, but he's not strong. We're very quickly running out of time. Would you be able to make your point? You were at the one in St. Michael, the first one, right?
No, I was at...
St. James.
No, let me tell you.
Okay.
My name is Buddy Laria,
I know about
and I was at the launch of it at
Great and Sealy.
Right, the first one.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want, my concern then is still now,
Okay.
but a lot has happened since then. I'm very concerned about the needless killings or murders that is happening in Barbados, and it's not seem to be getting any better. Now, I am concerned, and I raised this before, that for the past 53 years, there have been a political system in Barbados that discriminated against people who can't read. They were not allowed to vote without telling somebody that they cannot read. And most Barbadians never challenged it. It also allowed people to cross the floor when they're elected. So I'm very interested in the fact that the opposition leader has supported the commissions, which I do. And I'm looking forward to make some contributions, because the idea of regathering and the parish initiative, where each parish is given a theme, mean that there's a lot of work that can be done with the commission. So I'm looking forward to it. But I want to say again that the issue, because don't let us fool ourselves, people, BLP and DLP is going to sit on the commission. And the aspirations is going to be, next time I want to run for the House of Parliament. So you're not going to get away from that. So if we can have a principle of not crossing the floor, we're not talking about the commission now.
Assembly.
That is accepted.
Assembly.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah. Assembly. assembly principle, and I'm having trouble selling it, that it's not partisan. So I'm saying if I am to support it and to stress that it's not partisan, I want assurance that you are also going to make central government address the issue that the voting system of crossing the floor and people being allowed to vote even if they cannot read is taken serious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. The Honorable Adrian
have
Ford.
2 minutes.
Oh dear.
I'll get
A
to the
pleasant
session,
good
Crystal.
night to one and all. I know that Adrian will not forgive me if I didn't say a few words tonight.
You have to.
But I know we're being streamed as well.
Yeah.
I was sitting down listening to the contributions thus far. The words of Bill Gonin, that internet activist from Egypt, who would have fought for democracy, came to mind when he said, the power of the people far exceeds the people in power. And this assembly that is right before our eyes epitomizes this maxim, the power of the people. It really seeks to put the power back in the hands of the people. I just had a constituency clinic today, and if there was a people's assembly, trust me, the 10 persons or 15 persons I saw today, I would not have no reason to see. You don't need a singular figure, a single entity, a government, to carry out the functions of a community. Communities must have a tangible stake in every single thing they do. All they need from us policymakers and the government is support and guidance and a little help and leadership. But they have the power, the absolute empowerment and power to be able to look after themselves. So I want to say to my colleague, my comrade, my friend, and my neighbor, to continue with every collective sinew of this committee, because what you are doing is going to transform the lives of Barbadians and Barbadians. And for the young lady who was on my left, and probably to your right, Ralph, the doctor who talked about environment. There was an environmentalist here earlier, Jessica. When she made the point about the environment and the trust where this committee should be sensitized to the environment and what is happening, not only in sanitation, but we as a country have a wider function to play as it relates to our existential and the existential threat that we are faced with. The burning of stuff, the hydrocarbons that are affecting, the greenhouse gases from the industrial plants, the communities as it relates to the distribution and disposal of plastics that go into the earth and destroy our water system with the dioxins. The coast in Ralph constituency as we know it, as it relates to the ocean, when the heat causes the ice to melt, there is a rise in the ocean. It destroys the ocean as we know it. All these things communities, if they're sensitized to, they can obviously have a very serious hands-on approach to being able to mitigate the threat that threatens every single one of us and the unborn child. So it is an opportunity for communities not only to take care of themselves, but be part of the resistance that we need. Because Barbados now more than ever needs every single Barbadian to be part of making sure that Barbados is able to survive every single threat, including the existential threat as we know it. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
We definitely appreciate your comments because we have not had every MP or minister fully on board. There's even discussion amongst the taking away of power, the perceived taking away of power. So we thank you for your endorsement and your encouragement. And at this time, we would like to thank you, the audience, for being here, for your contributions and your input. And we definitely will be having our subcommittee review all of these submissions and collating the information. And we also endeavor to try to use as many channels as possible to have as many persons feeling as though they can give input, especially for those who don't feel comfortable coming out in person. But we definitely do appreciate you coming out in person. and we do hope that you get home safely. Next week is in St. Andrew.
Oh, dear. Excursion.
Yes,
Picnic
we're
basket.
going on an adventure for
Yes.
those of us, yes. So we'll be at the Allen School at 7 p.m. And for those of you who would not want to trek all the way out to St. Andrew, you can log on to the Facebook stream and you'll be able to access it there as well. I've also been posting some photos from it to the Instagram account, and if you would like to make any written submissions, I remind you, you can do so by emailing thorne.commission@barbados.gov.bb, telephone number 535-1600. Next week, Wednesday, the Allen School in St. Andrew. We look forward to seeing everyone there from the parish of St. Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Christchurch, for coming out.